The host of RN Breakfast, Patricia Karvelas, joins us now to talk federal politics. Patricia, g'day. I love talking to you because we get to hear about things that we don't necessarily hear about in the general news cycle. There's been so much focus over the past couple of weeks on the voice, the safeguard mechanism and housing, which are all worthy subjects. But there are other things happening as well. What can you tell us about the Fair Work Commission?
Very interesting, this story. So every year there is the national minimum wage case. And the Fair Work Commission takes submissions from a range of groups that do the heavy lifting in this space, but also the government. Now, you'll recall, I know you will, and I bet our viewers will too, that last year this became a big issue actually in the election campaign. And there was all sorts of claims that Anthony Albanese was basically an economic vandal or, really kind of pushing the economy to the brink. There was a lot of alarmism about an answer he gave during the election campaign about what Labor's view would be about if they became the government on a submission to the minimum wage case. At that time, it was about should the minimum wage be raised in line with inflation so it can keep up with the cost of living, right? And we all understand what that means. Things cost more at the supermarket, but if your wage isn't going up at the same pace, the value of that money that you're receiving is eroding. And the minimum wage, of course, is minimum and it matters a lot to people when it's eroding. So what the government says is influential. They don't determine it, the Fair Work Commission does, but they have an influence in putting their view across. So I was able to find out that on Friday, the Fair Work Commission submission from the government will be put in. What are they saying this year, given last year the Prime Minister said absolutely was his answer, it should keep up with inflation? I asked the Workplace Relations Minister. He said all will be revealed on Friday, but he gave me the strongest indication that while it won't be a photocopy of last year's submission, the same concept would be applied by this government. Here he is.
You never photocopy a submission one year to the next. They're never identical in every way. But, as I've said, our values haven't changed, and what you referred to there was a pretty strong value statement from the Prime Minister. That's as far as I'll go, though. OK.
OK, so that's Tony Burke, the Workplace Relations Minister. He went a little further. It's been sort of reported this morning by other outlets as a strong hint about where the minimum wage submission will go. I think it was a very strong hint indeed that the government, my understanding is they won't put a figure on it, but they will say it should keep up with the cost of living because these workers are the most vulnerable. And we know they are. That's the actual kind of concept, isn't it, Joe? It's the minimum wage. It's not people, obviously, on enterprise bargaining agreements and so forth.
And speaking of which, we're getting the latest CPI figure in a few hours, and inflation around 7% at the moment. But it's not. You're not getting the impression that the government would be pushing for that size increase in the minimum wage, or
Well, they're not going to put a figure on it, but if you're saying it should keep up with the cost of living, then last year, what was it, 5%, around that, from memory. But so this is significant, and it just shows the government philosophically leaning into those principles and not departing from them now that they're the government or that they've been in power a year. Anyway, Friday all will be revealed. You're right, the CPI figures will be out. Key moment, that economic data is very important in terms of setting what the RBA will do next week.
Now, discussions around housing policy continue this morning. The Greens are in an interesting situation again because they're pushing for more, and do they block this bill on the basis of it's just not enough, or do they let it through because at least it's something?
Well, this is the big dilemma, and they're being urged on both sides. Look, the Greens have been in a compromising mood on other issues. Safeguards mechanism, which was seen, the climate change legislation, which was seen as extremely contentious. They did a deal on that. They've done a deal on the National Reconstruction Fund. There is actually quite a lot that they've been negotiating on. There is a view that's building that they don't want to look like they're just, falling over on every government demand, that they want to look like they're playing hardball. But, they will be accused of holding it up. But it doesn't look like they're on the same page at all with the government on this. So you can't say that a deal is close because it's just not.
There's a pretty big
will it be done by the end of the week? I don't think so.
Pretty big difference between 5 billion and 500 mil.
Huge. And I thought a deal would be done because I thought these are two groups in the mood for dealing, but so far, no biscuit.
Cool. Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you, Patricia.
See ya.